everybody. My name is In Jin and welcome to iHome Church. For those of you joining us for the first time, please subscribe to our email list. I would like to first of all start off this sermon by thanking all of you who participated and joined us in our first webinar with Dr. Greg Bear, the author of Real Love. It was a fantastic evening. And it was just so wonderful to have him as a featured guest, allowing the audience to participate and ask him directly some of the most pressing questions that people were dealing with. And, he is not only an authority on relationships, but he has a way of delivering great sound bites, or wisdom nuggets as I call it, and incredibly practical, definitely applicable in our lives. And so I know that lots of people were helped that evening, and I am very, very grateful to Greg for allowing us to have that evening together. And I hope those of you who found the webinar insightful will go on and check out his books and his website and continue down the road in really developing real love in your lives. And for me, the word love is an incredibly important word, as I'm sure it is for many, many people. And it's one of those things that I've often thought about all throughout my life. Even though I was born and raised my primary years in Korea, we definitely had Disney. And we definitely had all those fairy tales that all the children of the world enjoy, and stories of Cinderella, stories of Sleeping Beauty, stories of Snow White, true love conquers all, and all you have to do is wait for your Prince Charming and everything will be hunky-dory and you will be happy forever after. Of course, as we get older and we kind of venture further down the line in terms of our journey throughout our life, we realize that love is not the most easy thing to have in our lives. And many of us kind of go into different relationships, different friendships with people that we meet at school or different colleagues, and later on married relationships, hoping to experience love. But the interesting thing and the point that Greg makes in his book is that many of us are kind of doomed from the start, in that we've never experienced, if we have never experienced what he calls unconditional love is, then what we end up dealing with in terms of our relationship is a whole lot of baggages of expectations. And usually expectations leads to disappointments, because we're always expecting things of other people and expecting them to fulfill it. And when they fall short, it results in anger, disappointment, and so on and so forth. And life can be a vicious cycle of anger, frustration, suffering, disappointments, so on and so forth. And so, he talks about the importance of experiencing unconditional love and having it in our lives before we can even attempt to share that with somebody. And so I guess the question that we would be asking ourselves is, well, what is real love? There are just so many ways to go about answering that question, but in his book, Real Love, Greg shares the story of the wart king. And I'm sure some of you have heard this story before, but it's a story about this prince who was born with warts all over his face, so much so that anybody that looked at him was horrified, and even his own parents, the beautiful king and queen of the kingdom were absolutely ashamed and afraid of his hideousness. And so the prince learned very early on that his warts were something that he needed to hide, and found himself isolating himself in the confines of his own room. But then the beautiful king and the beautiful queen passed on, and he became the king. And just as he has experienced all throughout his life, even though he was a king, people still laughed at him. Children still pointed at his warts, and people were repelled by his hideous warts all over his face. And so he decided to wear a bag over his head and go about his business in terms of ruling the kingdom. But when you have a bag over your head, it becomes very, very difficult to see. And so he found life to be quite cumbersome. Then one day he heard about this wise man that lived on top of the mountain. And so he said, aha! He had an aha moment, and he said, well, maybe if I seek the wisdom of this wise man, maybe he can solve my problem with this hideous warts. So one day he decided to take himself up to the mountain, and lo and behold, there was the wise man. And when he came upon the wise man, the first thing that the wise man said was, wow, you have a lot of warts on your face. And the wart king got so angry and said, is that the best that you can do? Is that the only thing you can do? I traveled all this way to seek some advice and wisdom, and all you can do is point out the warts on my face, just like the way everybody has done throughout my life. And so the wart king was so angry that he put the bag over his face again, and then try to run down the mountain. But of course, when you have a bag over your head, it becomes very difficult to see. So he stumbled upon some rocks or plants or whatever that was there, and stumbled all the way down and fell into the lake and started drowning. And while he was drowning, the wise man came and saved him and said, let's take the bag off of your head. And the wart king said, but you're going to laugh at me. And the wise man said, no, I'm not. And he says, well, people have always laughed at me, and so you're going to do the same. And he says, well, I am not all those people that have laughed at you, and I am not going to laugh at you. And he said, why is that? And the wise man said, well, because take a look at my face. I have warts too. And that's when the wart king realized, oh, you do have warts. So how is it that you can go about your life and not let it bother you? And he said, yeah, the wise man said, yeah, it was tough in the beginning. And, of course, there are people who poked fun at me and pointed out my warts. But, you go on being who you are, being truthful with the warts and all, with the flaws and all. And, of course, there will be people who will turn away from you and find you hideous. But there will also be people that likes you just the way you are and appreciates you for the truth of who you are, including your warts. And at the end of the day, those people are the ones that you want to be with anyway. And so the wart king was so inspired by the story that the wise man shared with him that he decided to live his life without the bag over his head, and realized that yes, some people continue to laugh at his warts and point at his warts, but soon he came upon new people who liked him just the way he was. And he realized that it doesn't matter how many people might turn away, as long as this one person or this group of people found him just wonderful, then that's all he really needed. And he learned to live happily ever after. And this story is kind of an interesting story in that I think all of us have gone through moments in our lives when we felt exactly like the Ward King, you know, and we want to walk around with a bag over our heads, and we want to please the whole world. We want everybody to be happy with us. And so in order to do that, many times we hide who we are, or we're not truthful about who we are, warts and all. And, you know, certainly for this Ward King, it was definitely a process of learning that he had to go through, and realizing that the wise man himself had warts. And if he went about his life and he could find people that he could love, or people that unconditionally loved him, and were not caught on this word condition. You know, I can only love you if you have no warts. These were people who were unconditionally loving, meaning warts and all. They were going to love you because of who you are. Well, then we realized that this is a story of incredible hope, in that, you know, the course of anyone's life is riddled with not just happiness and joy, but it's riddled with sometimes difficulties and obstacles along the way. But as long as we can be truthful as to who we are, instead of trying to please everybody and trying to, you know, just make everybody happy, which we ultimately cannot do, then sooner or later we will find like-minded people who want the same thing. So Greg kind of explains the story in terms of, you know, if you want real love, if you want genuine, authentic, or in our community, the words that my father has taught is true love, the importance of true love. If you want true love in your life, when we think about the story of the Ward King, what are we talking about here? Well, Greg is saying that in order to really experience this unconditional love, or real love as he calls it, or true love as we may call it in our community, the first thing needs to be that the truth of who we are needs to be present. We need to be truthful. Warts and all. We need to take the bags off of our head, and so the world can see who we really truly are. And so you want to present yourself as that truth. But in order to feel unconditional love, you need to be seen by the other, the truth of who you really are. And when that person wants to love you unconditionally, after having seen the truth of who you really are, that person can decide to fully accept who you are, warts and all. And by accepting you, after seeing the truth of who you are and accepting you as you are, that's when we can experience love. So the 4 steps that Greg talks about is: you need truth, you need to be seen, you need to be accepted, and then you feel loved. And this is how he kind of describes through the story of the Ward King what unconditional love may look like or feel like or can be experienced as such. And you know, my father has talked about real love, authentic love, or true love all throughout his life. He often has said it is the most important thing in the universe, in our lives. That's what makes us tick. You know, we are born to love and to be loved. And so everything that we do is geared towards experiencing that true love in our lives. And I know for a fact that, you know, when you have never really felt or experienced what genuine or authentic or true love is, there's this constant emptiness that just eggs you on through no matter what you do. And this feeling of loneliness, this feeling of heaviness and dissatisfaction in our lives. And Greg himself talks about it in his book. He tells his own story of how he was a very, very successful eye surgeon for 20 years of his life. And he basically accomplished all that he needed to accomplish, all of life goals that he set out for himself by his mid-30s. But he was still left with this feeling of emptiness that just would not go away. And so he fell into drug addiction and later found himself staring down a barrel of a 10mm semi-automatic gun, Smith & Wesson. And that's when he realized he needed help. And so he started researching and studying, trying to figure out what are some principles that I can apply in my relationships with people that I care about so that I can feel this feeling of love and this satisfaction of living. And so this is the process that really allowed him to become a renowned author of real love, after publishing 17 books on the subject. And I think, Greg is not alone in this journey, and everybody has experienced it. And I know that I myself, being born and raised in a community that preached true love or real love or authentic love, I've struggled for so many years, so many decades of my life, because I couldn't really come to a place where I could say clearly to myself that I know what true love is all about. I know, or I've experienced unconditional love. And I think a lot of people who have come into our community, they were attracted to our community because they thought that they experienced true love, the kind of unconditional love that they've never experienced before. I know that a lot of people said we were love bombing people and making them feel incredible love that they've never experienced before. But a lot of the children that were born within this community, because we grew up without our parents, because many times our parents were busy doing church work or doing mission work. We grew up in a community that preached and talked about true love all the time. But fundamentally, this unconditional love that comes from the parents, many of us didn't experience in our lives. So the unconditional love that we talk about all the time wasn't experienced by many of us. And then, when we became young adults and we enter into marriageable age, then we go to this marriage ceremony or the blessing, hoping that maybe looking towards the other to complete the picture and to give us the unconditional love that maybe we never experienced in our own family. But the reason why Greg says that when you have never experienced unconditional love and you try to find it in your marriage, expecting the other to provide that for you, your marriage is doomed to failure, is that if we don't know what it is, we won't know how to apply it into our new relationship, which is our marriage. And so we come in with best of intentions, and many times in a new relationship we put our best foot forward. We hide all the warts or the flaws or the imperfections from the other, and we hope that as we go on down the line that our warts will never be revealed, and we will just grow beautifully into a wonderful couple and have couple kids and raise beautiful families. But we know that that is not always that simple, because if we are not truthful about our own experiences, if we're not truthful about our own warts, our own history, or our own wounds, or the pain or the suffering that we have gone through, the other will never see the truth of who we really are. And I've often said, that many of us who have struggled in our relationships were merely surviving, in that as good Moonies, as good religious people, we were just, following orders. Make your marriage work. And that was the order from God and from the universe. And so we tried our best to survive. But in order to thrive in a married or a blessed relationship, we got to do more than survive. And so I always talk about the importance of having truth and honesty, T&H, before you arrive at love. And the Ward King story expresses exactly that. You gotta start with truth and honesty of who you are, allowing your spouse or the other person, important person in your relationship, to give them a chance to really get to know the truth of who you are. And guess what? Many of us are afraid to really show the real us to our parents or to our spouse, because we're afraid of displeasing them or disappointing them. Because the kind of love that we have known throughout our whole life was extremely conditional. You do this, be a good child, then I'll love you. If you don't do this, then I'll love you less, and I'll be terribly upset or angry with you. This was the way that most of us were raised. So we learn how to please. We learn how to fulfill conditions. We learn how to be incredibly successful in life. But then comes this incredibly nagging, empty feeling, because we were so busy fulfilling different conditions in our lives and becoming extremely successful at it. I went to some of the best universities in the world, but I had this incredible emptiness inside of me that just could not be explained away. And it's because when you haven't been loved unconditionally, then it becomes difficult to do anything else in your life or to really experience real and genuine love. And in my case, when my first marriage failed, I really felt like the Ward King, in that the most important thing in my life, I couldn't make a success of. I fulfilled all the conditions in terms of my academic progress, in terms of my career. I completed all the conditions and did it well. But in the most important thing, which was in the domain or realm of true love that I was supposed to experience in the context of a married relationship, I utterly failed. And it made me feel like the ugliest, the most hideous wart princess around. And you realize that, you come to a point in your life where you are so afraid. Is there anybody out there that's going to really see me for who I am and love me regardless? And it's an incredibly scary step to take. But the incredible thing is when you continue on with the hope that you may not please your parents, you may not please your family, you may not please your community, you may not please the world. But if there is one person in the world willing to see the truth of who you are, accept you and love you, there is nothing like it. There is nothing like it in that real love, authentic love, true love that you feel is incredibly fulfilling and satisfying. And I count my lucky stars and I count my blessings because, now I have this incredible person that I call my husband, and he sees the truth of what I am, and accepts me for what I am and loves me for what I am. He's not trying to change me. He's not trying to manipulate me into something that he wants. He is not trying to cajole and, persuade me to be this or that. He accepts me, the truth of who I am and what I want to be in my life. He sees it and he accepts it and loves me for it, warts and all. And let me tell you, brothers and sisters, there is nothing more beautiful, more inspiring, more empowering, more uplifting than experiencing true love in our lives. And so for people who kind of have this difficulty in understanding, well, what is true love? What is Reverend Moon talking about? All throughout his life, he talks about true love as if he is drunk on love. Well, once you've experienced what real love, authentic love, what true love is, yeah, you live your life as if you are drunk on love. I get it now. And so it's just an incredible eye-opener. And certainly, it took me many, many decades to get here, to finally understand what true parents and what my father has been preaching all his life. And so the power of unconditional love, this power of what my father has many times taught, he taught that true love is God's love. And what is God's love? It's parental love. What does a parental love mean? What are the qualities of true love? It's eternal, it's absolute, it's unchanging, and it's unique. Unique to you and me. And that's the beauty of parental love, in that it doesn't matter what conditions you feel or you don't feel. Once you have a child, you're going to love it for the rest of its life. I am not going to love my son or daughter less because she falls short of some condition that I set out for her. Whether she falls short or whether she stumbles or whether, he hurts himself along the way, I will never, never stop loving him unconditionally. And that's the beauty of this love that true father is talking about, that true parents is talking about, and that Greg is talking about when he says real love. And so I want to share with you this one quote that my father shared. He says, he asks the question, what is true love? It is God's love. Then what is God's love? He says, Jesus defined it as love that is capable of loving an enemy. Those who can unconditionally love everyone, including their enemies, must command the respect of others, whether they are black, white, or yellow. This would be true in the past, in the present, and on into the future, even 1,000,000 years from now. So when we are capable of truly learning how to unconditionally love the people in our lives, then the world will begin to change, starting with you and me. Our families are going to start to change. Our communities and our societies and our nations are going to start to change. And before we know it, the world will start to change and come to realize that really the most important thing in our lives is true love. And for those of us who have not experienced it in our childhood, don't give up. Don't lose hope. Because we can learn how to unconditionally love. And that's the beautiful thing about a book like Greg Bear's book. It's that these are simple tools that we can apply into our lives so that we can practice learning how to live a life loving somebody unconditionally. Loving somebody for the truth of who they are, seeing them for the truth of who they are, accepting them, warts and all, and still loving them without conditions, without limitations, and without restrictions. And if we start to do that, we will see and experience our lives transformed. So wishing you real love, authentic love, and true love. Have a blessed week. Take care.
Face telling me I'm so special. Oh, I don't want no empty words laced in marks, confidential. Do you really wanna know what I want? Do you really wanna know what I need? I don't want no garnished smiles, well displayed motivation. Oh, I don't want no palm-top pie served on base dedication. Do you really wanna know what I want? Or do you really wanna know what I need? Asking much for me to finally see the real you, baby. I don't think it's wanting much to see you naked without your false pretenses. Open up your eyes and take a look at the one standing right before you. Open up your heart and see your whole new world is waiting, waiting for you. Cars trimmed and lined in finest leather. I don't want no mile-long yachts, cushion seats, brushed with feathers. Do you really want to know what I want? Do you really want to know what I need? Wanna know what I want? Do you really wanna know what I need? I want real love, baby. I want real love. I want real love, baby. I want real love.
If you have questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to injinmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to sign up to our email list. And if you would like to contribute to our work here at iHome Church, please click on the donate button. Thank you. Bye-bye.